Welcome to today's Learn Now online webinar, Ethical Hacking 101. Your moderator for today is Darren Rambo. Darren will be available at all times to handle any technical issues or questions about the presentation format or software. Today's featured speaker is security expert Rafiq Wayani. Rafiq will begin his presentation shortly. If you have any questions during the presentation, please leave a question in the question area of the webinar screen and Darren will assist you. At the end of the presentation, Rafiq will answer additional questions during a 15-minute question and answer session. Don't worry, if we can't get to your question, you will still be able to submit a question after the event. Please listen for details at the end of the session. I'd like to introduce your presenter for today, Rafiq Wayani. Bringing over 30 years of advanced IT experience to each course and adding his unique perspective and real-world tips, Rafiq has a knack for making complex topics easy to understand. In addition to being an engaging IT and network instructor, Rafiq has extensive experience as a system architect, software engineer, database administrator, and project manager. Rafiq holds multiple professional IT certifications, including Microsoft Solutions Developer, Systems Engineer, Application Developer, Database Administrator, Trainer, Master Certified Network Engineer, and CompTIA A+. He also holds several Microsoft certifications, including MCP, MCSE, MCDBA, MCSD, and MCT. With his IT background and impressive list of credentials, Rafiq has uniquely qualified to both teach and author courses on numerous IT topics, including Microsoft, Linux, VMware, Active Directory, Oracle, SQL Server, .NET, and more. To present Ethical Hacking 101, I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Rafiq at this time. Rafiq?
Hey guys, how are you doing? It is morning here, late morning here. I'm going to be discussing Ethical Hacking 101 with you. I'm very excited to be here to present this course. I'm not really sure how many of you know, how many of you guys have been working in information technology for a while, and how many of you are interested in learning about hacking from, well, what you may have seen in movies and seen on TV and learned about from the media in general. First of all, I want to tell you that hacking is nothing like what it seems to be inside of, well, movies. I'm going to introduce hacking to you. I'm going to talk to you about the types of hackers there are. I'm going to tell you and demonstrate to you one example of what creating a shadow involves. I'm going to talk to you about and demonstrate enumeration to you. And that's where I will kind of end this particular webinar. A little bit of history to start with. Back in the early 80s, yes, that's when my career began, there used to be something called phreaking. For those of you guys that have been around for a while may recognize this term. There was many different kinds of phreaking. The very common one was phone phreaking, where somebody hacked into a AT&T telephone trunk, found out some numbers that they can use to go to a payphone and dial anywhere they chose around the world at no cost to them. And AT&T and other major providers were constantly battling, fighting to keep up with the hackers who constantly found out these free phone numbers where they could dial anywhere at no cost. Then there was this breaking into a system. Breaking into a system, which is really what used to be known as hacking prior to hacking. Breaking into a system really involved you knowing the system and understanding the system. There were no tools available. You needed to code. You needed to understand the operating system. You needed to understand the communication mechanisms. You needed to be well aware of how modems worked and how systems, and also in order to remote into a system, there was no generally available internet. Internet was available, but not to the general population in the early and mid 80s, even the late 80s and early 90s. You really needed to know the phone numbers you could use to break in. Then hacking came into the picture, and hacking was a term that was utilized, well, quite a bit. The movies that come to mind, if you remember, in 1994, I believe there was a movie with Sandra Bullock that was called The Net, which introduced hacking, and that was followed by, later in the 90s, a movie called Swordfish with, I believe it was Hugh Jackman and John Travolta. These movies that show, and actually in the 80s, there was a Matthew Broderick movie that was talking about hacking known as War Games, very popular movie. These movies and TV shows and much of what you see in the media about hacking and the way hacking is done is very, very fictional. You don't just drive along the street and hack into the traffic lights. You cannot just hack into a closed system. It involves tremendous amount of effort, amazing and incredible amounts of knowledge, and a lot of patience. To define hacking, hacking is a way to gain valuable intel about systems. Valuable intel. To learn where the system is located is just the beginning. To learn what's inside of the system and what information is in the system, what databases are in the system, what networking devices are connected, what storage devices are connected, if it has a wireless connectivity that you can probe into, really anything that you can get into to pretend as if you and your system are inside of the system even though you're looking at it from the outside. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you've done this or have been aware of this. If you take a small portable router, and yes, there are many small portable routers that you can just grab, and you happen to go to an airport or to a Starbucks or to a Best Buy or to your neighborhood library where they provide wireless services, and you enable your router, and you call your router the same name as perhaps something very easy, such as library Wi-Fi access or something like that, or Starbucks internet or something to that effect, and you start announcing IP addresses. In other words, make that router a DHCP server, people's machines will automatically begin connecting to you. Of course, this is not something you want to do, but it's very easy to do, to be able to have someone connect to you out of their own free will, but unknowingly, and then what you do from there, it's up to you. So many different types of hackers. There's something called a white hat hacker. A white hat hacker is someone who does hack for the purposes of doing good reasons, and proper reasons authorized by an organization, a proper organization, and this person is hacking perhaps their own system to learn about ways and vulnerabilities in their own system, trying to figure out if there's a way for someone else to break into a system that they're working with. Plug all the holes from a security perspective on a Windows server, a Linux server, a database server, a web server, their networking environment, the ports that they have open, and try to figure out constantly, while new applications and new structures are being installed inside of their environment, how best to mitigate the risks. A white hat hacker has to stay one step ahead of whoever or whomever is trying to gain access to their system, all the while making sure that the system is available and convenient for the people that need access to it to be able to work with it. The purpose of a white hat hacker who works within the organization, within the realms of their systems, is to make certain that the systems are secure, patched, and properly accessible and workable, yet very secure. If security goes left, convenience goes to the right. The more secure you want to be, the less convenient things will be for you. A white hat hacker has to make sure that remote connectivity by authorized, authenticated users of the organization remains just that. People that are trying to break into the system in an unauthorized manner cannot do so because of measures that have been put in place, because of multi-factor authentication that has been put in place. In addition to supplying a user ID and password, the remote user also has to supply some biometric, has to supply a SMS key that was sent via a text message, has to supply a security identifier that was a really long security identifier that was sent via an email. That user has to log on using the machine that has been approved to log on to the system, using the MAC address of the device, of the networking device that has been approved to log on to the system. And a plethora of ways that can be used to make sure that the remote users that are logging on to your systems are logging on in an authorized manner and are only the ones that are authorized to get into the system. A black hat hacker, on the other hand, is a polar opposite of the white hat hacker. This is a person that's trying to gain access to a system in an unauthorized manner, illegal manner, using any means possible to gain access to a system. They're going to do reconnaissance. They're going to go around trying to figure out what the systems are like. They're trying to gain access to a system that they know nothing about. They don't know what the structure is like. They don't know what systems are involved. There are Windows systems, Linux systems, storage systems, database servers, application servers, what kind of information is being kept, and how many branches there are. They're going to do all this work to try and gain access to the system. They're going to probe the organization's networks. They're going to scan the networks any way possible to try and figure out a loophole. It is the responsibility of the white hat hacker within the organization and the responsibility of the intrusion detection systems, IDS, that have been put in place by the white hat hacking team to make sure that they're able to understand and recognize this black hat hacker long before the black hat hacker has the ability to gain access to a system. If I, the white hat hacker, want someone who is unauthorized to gain access to the system, to gain access to my system, I'm going to at least make sure that the person that's trying to gain access to my system gains access to a system I want them to gain access to. This way I can learn more about them. These systems that I have set up, a white hat hacker has set up within the organization, are known as honeypots. To the black hat hacker who is coming in from the outside, they don't know because they cannot see physically what machine they're logged onto. Today, with virtual environments and virtualization technology and cloud infrastructure, it's very easy to create a fake, large electronic infrastructure and a large network on the inside. You can create a wide area network complete with routers and switches and gateways and application servers and database servers and make the black hat hacker think that they're logged onto a real system. It is very easy by taking some time for a white hat hacker who works for the organization to pretend and make a pretend system that looks very much like the real deal. Put in fake applications and fake database servers, create a fake network that's large, and then once the unauthorized hacker tries to get in, to basically create a trap for them. Try to find out who is trying to get in, what their intentions are, and try to get them and recognize and identify their ID before they gain access to any real data. A gray hat hacker is someone who plays on both sides. Basically, whoever pays the gray hat hacker more is the one they're working for, which is another way of saying they can't be trusted. Then there are script kiddies. Script kiddies are really amateur hackers. I don't even think they should be called hackers. These are people that don't really have enough or sufficient information about any system. They're capable of running scripts, pushing on a button, opening up log files, and once they're getting the information that they want to get, that they're trying to get, they basically leave. They're just trying to run things that have already been created for them. Script kiddies are hackers, if you will, at a very, very amateur basic level. The white hat, black hat, gray hat hackers, sorry about that, I've never experienced technical difficulties ever, right? Neither have you. Okay. So what do I mean? What do I mean when I say creating a shadow? Well, one of the ways that hackers gain intel on their suspects, on unsuspecting people or organization, is really to install something on their system. Is really to install a device, an application, or service that the people don't recognize, that the organization can't see. Right? You really want to think about that. You really want to think about that when you're trying to do something in a database server, an application server, your networking environment. If there's something installed, you can't see a background service that's installed that you can't see. What do you end up having to do? Well, if you can't see it, then it doesn't exist. The person that's responsible for making sure things like that don't get installed or don't take over the system is by way of keeping track of what's happening to the system. If you see unusually large activity, networking activity, if the drive is clicking all the time, you get strange pop-ups. You're connected to systems that you don't recognize. Configuration changes are made that you don't recognize. When you connect to a system that you're aware of, such as a common DNS address to your domain controller, and you're connected to a system that doesn't exist on your environment, you really have to be vigilant. You can use hidden cameras. You can turn on video feed remotely at the user's desk. Have you ever done that? It can be done with relative ease with the things that are available today. Okay, so you really have to think about that. The objective here is to gain valuable information that cannot be obtained another way. There's also something called enumeration. Enumeration allows you to learn as much as you can about a local or remote system. You really iterate through components, users, devices. Use the information to probe the system further. So for example, let's say you realize that the organization you're about to hack into has Active Directory installed on it, has a Radius server installed on it, they have a VPN server, they have an SQL Server database. Once you realize or recognize that that's what's installed, you have to figure out what users have access, what group policies are enabled. You have to realize what organization units are active, what permissions the people have, what operating systems that people are using, and things of that nature. That is a way to iterate through the system. You can use scripts. In the Linux world, you can use bash scripts. In the Windows world, you can use PowerShell. You can also use application management tools if you have remote access to systems. For example, in the SQL Server arena, you can use SQL Server Management Studio. In Oracle, maybe you can use a tool like Toad. Maybe you can use SQL Plus. Maybe you can try and import and export users in and out of systems so that you have access to them an authorized way, or even an unauthorized way. If you are a white hat hacker, you're going to enumerate through the system just to see if you can. Maybe you should not allow people to enumerate through the system. After all, think about it for a minute. Why would you or anyone within your organization want to iterate through all of the users inside of your organization? Why you or someone you work with have a need to iterate through all of the group policies? Why would they want to look at all of the networking components or all of the networking devices, right? So really, you want to prevent someone from being able to globally scan every component on the network, every database server in your environment. Why would they want to look at that? Why would somebody inside of your organization who is not a database administrator want to go through all of the database servers, figure out all the applications that are installed, figure out all of the database servers that are in place and that are working? So some of these things are important. Now, what I want to do is I want to do two demonstrations. I want to demonstrate how to enumerate. I'm going to do it in Windows because it's an easier example. And I'm going to show you how to create a shadow inside Windows using a keylogger. And I'm going to evaluate the log that is generated by the keylogger so you can see what it does. All right? Let's take a look at a couple of these things. Now, I'm going to open up my virtual machine, and I'm going to open up my Windows box. So here is my Windows VM. Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up PowerShell inside of it. Now, I'm not really sure if you have worked with PowerShell or not. If you haven't, well, I would advise you to begin and get going on using PowerShell because you really cannot effectively administer a Windows environment without the use of PowerShell or without knowing the PowerShell environment well. Let me give you an example of how powerful PowerShell can be. I can open up a notepad right over here. To give you an example, I'm going to open up one notepad, I'm going to open up another notepad, and I'm going to open up a third notepad. I'm just going to give you an easy example of how much damage you can really do with PowerShell. So I've got 3 notepads open. If I do get process notepad, it lists me these 3 notepads that are running. Here are the IDs associated with them. In one of these 3 notepads, I'm going to call this, I'm just going to save it as a file here. I'm going to save this as test. And if I run this again, it still just displays notepad, right? I cannot tell which one of them is the test notepad. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say get process notepad, select main window title ID format table auto, and here I can see which one is the test notepad. It's the one with the ID 2376. Let's say that these 3 notepads were processes that I was evaluating, right? And I want to kill one of these processes. I want to kill 2 of the 3. Let's say this process, the one that says this is a test, was important to me, and the other 2 weren't. I can do this. I can say get process ID 2376. That will display just that one process. I can also say get process notepad where the ID is equal to 2376. Okay, there's that notepad process. If I say ID is not equal to 2376, these are the other 2 notepads that are open. These are the blank ones. It's this one and this one. Once I get that, I can simply say stop process and kill the other 2, leaving this process running. This can be very important when you have a lot of things running that you want to display or kill, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Let me show you something else. I'm going to open up the registry editor, and in the registry editor, I'm going to go over to System Software, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do CD HKLM, HK Local Machine, CD Software. Look, here I am looking at the software hive. Look at this right here. Notice that? Same hive. I'm basically plugged right into the registry. Okay? I'm going to do this. I'm going to say make directory Rafiq, and I'm going to refresh the hive right here. Here's Rafiq that I just created. Then this is a way I can embed something inside of a particular registry, someone's registry, including my own, and then quietly get out without them knowing. I can just as easily remove it. Go back up here, do a refresh, and notice Rafiq is gone. Okay. Let me show you something else. Inside of here, in PowerShell, you can also create your own functions and your own aliases and your own scripts very, very quickly. So, for example, when I type ping google.com, it will ping Google. Let me ping another system. I can ping, I don't know, any system I like. He's trying to find it. Ping localhost. How about that? Okay, so I'm pinging myself. Ping localhost with IPv4. Excuse me. Now, let's say I don't like these 4 ping requests or 4 ping replies. I only want to ping once. I want to get a quick response back. Okay? I can customize PowerShell to do just that for me. Watch. I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it quick ping. And in the quick ping function, I'm going to do ping it just one, wait 100 milliseconds, and ping whatever whatever address has been sent. When I do quick ping and I say localhost, look, it does a ping just once. Notice that? It does it very quickly. I ran quick ping, and it ran this function that I just created inside of PowerShell. I can then say set alias QP quick ping. By doing that, I can say QP localhost, and I just created myself my own function within PowerShell that works great for me. Right. Awesome. Let me show you something else. For those of you guys that work with, for those of you guys that have worked with VBScript, will recognize this little piece of code that I'm about to write. This piece of code is going to iterate through the network adapters that are on my system and display them. So I'm going to do, and I'm going to use Windows Management Instrumentation to accomplish this. So get object, like so, probe network adapter, and get the name of the network adapter, add a carriage return line feed, save this, and save this as VBS. Let me make sure I got it right. Instances Win32 network adapter, great. Now when I do work, notice that it lists me all of the network adapters that it can see on this device. All right? So I can display this information very, very easily in PowerShell. I do Win32 network adapters, and I can probe. So here I am enumerating through the network adapters on my system. I can also enumerate through get, if I do logical disk, Win32 logical disk. This is a way for you to iterate through the network environment and be able to see what's available out there. Okay? Let me show you something else. Let's minimize this. Check to see my IP address that I have over here. And it is 10.02.15. Okay, I'm going to open up nmap. Nmap is one of the utilities that allows you to probe a network. Okay, probe and do an intense scan of the network. My IP address is 10.02.15. Right, so I can scan 10.02.15 to 30. Well, maybe I'm just going to do 16. And I'm going to issue a scan. Okay, just going to scan 15 and 16. Here it is. Nmap is going to scan host so that I can figure out what ports are open on this device. Here you go. It's connecting. It completed connecting. Right. Okay. And it's going to scan the system so that we can learn about all the ports that are open so we can, of course, begin probing it. Now, while this is going on, I have a keylogger that I have running right over here. Okay. It's already been logging everything that I've been doing. If I click on report for a pick page, which is today, and I click on keystrokes and clipboard, so it tells me everything that I have done in my system since I opened it up. Okay. This is a log that it generates. And I want you to notice, now this is the free version of the keylogger. This is not the paid version. I can't see it in applications, and the keylogger doesn't show up. As you can see, it's hidden from the processes. Right. I see ZenMap, which is this right over here. Here it is. It says unknown port. Nothing is open as of this moment. Scanned a bunch of things. Right. All the ports that are scanned in detail. And this is Nmap. And Nmap is free. You can download Nmap, and the ZenMap tool, which is what I'm looking at right over here, is a GUI version of the Nmap tool. And here, there is no keylogger that I can see. It's silent and it's quiet. Okay. If I minimize this, here's a log that it generates. And I'm able to see, for example, where I started PowerShell from, what PowerShell commands I entered. If I entered in a password, it would grab that as well. I'm able to see, and this is, by the way, this particular version of keylogger is free. It's downloadable.
there are many keyloggers that are available. Many of them cost money, many of them are free. So this is very, very easy to do, very easy to install. And if you simply, after you install it, you specify apply and spy equal basically hide. You can use a hidden keystroke of Control-Alt-Shift-U, or whatever keystroke you want, and it will open it up. You can also send reports. Yeah, so this is, you can also send reports to an email if you want automatically. Okay, so this is completely free, a way for you to spy. The send daily, I don't want the software. Send daily reports to your email is one of the things that costs money. Once you register for this, you're able to enable that feature. You can click on used applications. Look, it tells me that I use Chrome. There's a service that I use, Notepad, nmap installer, WinPcap. It tells me everything that I used since it's been logging its information. And the websites that I may have visited right over here, everything is logged. And when I click on apply and spy, I say yes, it's hidden, and I cannot see it in the tray. This is the VirtualBox Guest Editions. And this is, as you can see, the USB that I've got connected. So I can't see it in the tray. And if I look in the processes, I'm unable to see keylogger in the process as well. So creating a shadow, enumerating through a system are just some of the things that you'll need to do as you're browsing around, learning about a system. So knowing the tools, knowing the commands, knowing the networks, the iOS systems, the database applications, the more you know, the better hacker you're going to become. Because not only will you be able to get the information that you intended on getting, you're going to become very, very proficient with being able to use the information for the purposes of using it to obtain valuable intel, right? So I try to give you a brief introduction to hacking. I spoke to you about types of hackers. I used keylogger to show you how you can create a shadow. I showed you nmap and zenmap, a way that you can probe a system, look at the services, look at the open ports. It does a very, very detailed report. Nmap/zenmap is free. Keylogger that I used is free. And I showed you using a very simple tool like PowerShell, you can enumerate through a network adapters, you can enumerate through logical disks, and many other components. I'm really glad you have been here and that you enjoyed this presentation and you learned something new.
Thank you, Rafiq. At this time, Rafiq will be taking questions from you. Please type in your question or any questions that you might have in the question area of the webinar screen, and Rafiq will answer as many questions as time permits. Questions that we cannot get to can be emailed to webinars@learnnowonline.com after the event. And before we get to the Q&A, I'd like to invite you to attend our next webinar, OWASP Securing Your Website with Don Kiley. This webinar will take place on Wednesday, October 14th at 1:00 p.m. Central Time. You're welcome to register at any time for this event at www.learnnowonline.com/webinars. And now to your questions.
Hey guys, so I see a few of the questions. There are a lot of questions listed here. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I possibly can. So please bear with me here. Honeypots. Somebody is asking how to make sure honeypots are separate from real systems, from active systems. That's a little bit of a complicated question. The easy answer would be to make sure that your outside people, the people that are trying to gain access to your system, are led there. It's rather a complicated and involved process, but you would have to create a structure that is very, very attractive to the hacker on the outside so that they believe, completely convinced that the system you have created is real. PowerShell is something, if you haven't used it and haven't worked with it, I would advise you to begin working with it. There's several PowerShell resources out there. PowerShell is a Microsoft administrative tool that is used by Microsoft Windows admins to manage, and administer the Windows networking environment and everything inside of it. So PowerShell is something that you can learn, as I said, and Keylogger is something that you can download. And yes, you can detect Keylogger if someone is using it. Again, you'd have to recognize the hidden applications that are running. That would involve knowledge of Linux, knowledge of Windows, and how to see hidden components. That is not something the average user would be able to see. In this course, I show you how to detect these things. In the full course, I show you how to detect these things. You're very welcome. I'm very glad you guys enjoyed this. Skill sets that are considered essential for a CEH, you need to know Linux. I can't stress enough. The Certified Ethical Hacker requires you to know Linux and Linux tools. Again, I introduced that in depth and in detail in this course. This was just a brief overview of a couple of things associated with hacking. It didn't even scratch the surface. I was simply talking about enumerating through the information within your environment. I used PowerShell to do that. And then I used very simple Keylogger to show you how you can record keystrokes. There are many ways to detect Keylogger. Let's see what else someone else said. Yes. PowerShell can execute programs under different usernames, and it can also execute programs with different access tokens and elevated privileges in Windows as well. You just have to know how to do that. Nmap. Nmap is very, very safe since it's reading and probing TCP, UDP, and ICMP. Those are the protocols that it's using to probe your network. It's very safe, and it's probing around to see what ports are open, among other things. Distributed denial of service attacks. There are many ways you can prevent that. It's kind of a lengthy process to talk about here. There are many ways that you can prevent DDoS attacks. DDoS attacks have been around for well over a decade and a half, since the early days of the website, web interface, and internet environment. Can Nmap be identified as malware? Can be, but I don't think so. It's not a virus. It doesn't do what worms or Trojans do. It's not inserting anything. The objective of using Nmap is to be silent and probe what's happening. The full course will cover CEH credentials. Okay. The full course will cover the certified ethical hacking credentials, not specifically just probing firewalls. Script kiddies are easier to identify. That's correct. DNS attacks are also something that I discuss. Is it difficult to detect malware on a Linux system? No, I would say it's easier to detect if you are proficient with the Linux environment than it is in the Windows environment. But that's a personal opinion. This session is not going to be continued on October 14th. There's a different course that is being displayed that is going to be represented on October 14th. There are lots of sources where you can learn Linux. Can Keylogger be spotted by an antivirus? No, Keylogger will not be spotted by antivirus software. My course will involve simulated systems and simulated attacks. CISSP CERT gives you more of what you need to know about becoming a security professional. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation. There are many different ways you can detect rootkits. I discussed them in the entire course. Why is learning Linux so important? Because Linux is a primary tool that is used by hackers. There are Linux systems that I'm going to introduce to you in the entire course,
and you'll have a much better reason for using Linux. There are lots of books on this topic. Linux Plus certainly is a good start. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Yes, you should all become hackers. White hat hackers, all right? Any specific Linux version? Well, I use version 7, CentOS version 7. Course title, Certified Ethical Hacking, CEH. Backtrack is built on Kali Linux. Thank you very much for enjoying the presentation. I'm glad you liked it. Yes, I have a lot of opinions about the Kali distribution. I use it quite a bit. Yes, there is a way to create a shadow in the mobile environment as well. Keyloggers are available for the mobile environment. Not only that, for the mobile environment like your phones and tablets, if you know where to go, you'll be able to create a shadow on the mobile environment so that you get text messages, even including emails, on what the mobile environment is doing, what phone numbers they're dialing, who they're communicating with. You can go very, very far with that. Absolutely, there is a way to create a shadow in the mobile world. Yes, there is a way to protect against shadows, of course. You just have to know what to do. In my course, I'm going to talk about that and explain that as well. These are fun questions. Is there a way to, absolutely, there's a way to see silent processes. Again, you just have to know what to look for. You will see the presentation and the future webinars on Learn Now online site. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you again. You're very welcome. I'm really glad I was able to present this for you. You can simply register for the course and take it. You don't necessarily need prerequisites. I recommend that you know Linux, that you know Windows environments, and that you have been working in information technology for 2 to 3 years. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please don't get your enemies' bank accounts. I see it's mentioned as a future topic. Okay. Yes, you can be trained and become a white hat hacker, of course. CEH, I believe, is accredited in both places, the UK and the US. But I'm not in the UK, so I can't speak for it. Any Linux versions? I would hope that you use either CentOS 7 or Ubuntu, the latest version of Ubuntu, and get used to working with Linux. I've been working in the security arena since 97, 98. I've been working as an IT professional for over 30 years, since 1985. I do discuss Wi-Fi hacking and webcams and talk about that as well, as in addition to talking about the ABG and AC standards associated with Wi-Fi. Lots of companies hire hackers. It's more important now than ever.
All right, that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you, Rafiq, for sharing this information with us. And I'd like to thank each of you for coming to this Learn Now online webinar.